Hello, everyone, and welcome to Field Lab Earth, the podcast that's all about past and present advances in agronomic, crop, soil, and environmental sciences. Today, we are so excited to announce that we are doing our very first podcast swap with Vikram Baliga, host of the Planthropology Podcast. We'll be doing an episode on his show next Tuesday, May 19th, where we'll be talking about science, storytelling, and the overlap in between. And today he'll be on our show talking about water retention products, water conservation, and home lawns. Make sure to subscribe to Planthropology wherever you find your podcasts to get our episode delivered directly to your device. And if you like either of our shows, please rate and review us wherever you listen. It really helps us out. I'm your host, Abby Morrison. Let's talk about science. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today we have Vikram Baliga with us. Vikram is the manager of the Texas Tech University Greenhouse and Horticulture Gardens and an instructor of horticulture in the Department of Plant and Soil Science. He's currently in the process of completing his PhD at TTU in horticulture and turfgrass science. His dissertation focuses on water conservation in the urban landscape. Hi, Vikram. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing super well. So excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. So we're going to be talking about a topic today that's tied in pretty closely with your dissertation, which is water retention products for home lawns. Can you kind of give an overview of just what they are, how they work, why they are so important?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's a bunch of products, liquid, granular, otherwise, that are marketed by these companies to homeowners and people in the residential and urban landscape industry, primarily. And the claims for a lot of these products are use them on your landscape, put them in your yard, and you'll save, X percentage of water trying to keep your grass alive and looking good. So whether, some say 50%, some don't really make a hard claim on that. So there's a variety of different classes of these products available. Some are wetting agents and surfactants. Some are fertilizers that, are really intended to improve plant fitness and response and resiliency and all of that. And some are polymer-coated sands that are essentially intended to increase water holding capacity and make plant water available for longer. And so we picked a few of these and tested them in Bermuda grass turf mowed at maybe approach height, on a golf course. So it's a 1/4 inch, which is a little bit shorter than most homeowners typically keep their lawn. But we were really wanting to exhibit a suboptimal, very dry, very stressful conditions on the turf.
Sure. And you kind of had two parts of this experiment. So the first one was obviously just testing the products themselves. But you also had a survey that went along with that. So can you just give us kind of a high-level overview of which products were you testing, and then what was going on with the survey? What were you doing with that?
Okay, so we tested a couple of products from Revive, which is a company called Revive, and there's a liquid and a granular product. The granular product is essentially dehydrated poultry waste mixed with a wetting agent and some other stuff. The liquid formulation is similar. It's just the mode of action was a little bit different. That one is typically more of a strict surfactant or wetting agent. We also tested two polymer sands, Max Sand and AquaSmart, which have similar modes of action to each other, where they are like a cross-linked polymer that are impregnated on a sand particle. You put it in, it's supposed to hold 5, 10, some number of times of its weight in water. And so those are the basic products that we tried. The survey was related, but a little separate from this part of the study. So we surveyed about just over 300 homeowners throughout our region of Texas, which is the Texas Great Plains. A lot of listeners may not be super familiar with Texas geography, but through the Panhandle down to about a town called San Angelo. So it was several hundred, or a couple hundred miles north to south. But we surveyed respondents generally in municipalities or population centers to this area to see, one, what are they already doing in the landscape? What are their management practices and attitudes towards water use in the urban landscape? Then we also developed a communication piece, which may be something that a municipality may include in a mailer or some kind of other marketing campaign to try to adjust the way that people use water. So one of these advertising images or marketing pieces was very positive, like, here's 10 steps to saving water in your landscape. If we all work together, rah, we'll save water and things will be great. The other one was very aggressive in nature, bright red colors and pictures of like dry creek beds and lake beds and stuff like that, pretty much saying it's dry. We are about out of water. Your municipality is not going to have water in 90 days if you don't, and so you will not, shall not, all that kind of stuff. This survey was developed when I was still with the Extension Service, and one of my major areas of focus was water conservation in the urban landscape. And so I worked with municipalities and water authorities and things like that. And so it was right on the heels of the worst drought in at least 50 years in Texas. We got, in our region of Texas, something like 4 inches of rainfall in all of 2011, and 2012 wasn't much better. So this was kind of coming out of that drought. And so that was the basic idea. How can we, as educators and communicators, and even as municipalities, influence the way that people use water in their landscape?
Wow, there is so much that I just want to dig into immediately. So reeling things back just a little bit for some of us who, like myself, are not in these sciences. When you say surfactant, you just mean something that is like applied to the surface, and mode of action is just kind of like how this is triggered to do what it's supposed to do. Is that about right?
Yeah, essentially. So a surfactant or a wetting agent is a substance that is supposed to essentially break surface tension. So when it's applied with something like a herbicide, it breaks some of the surface tension, spreads the product out over a leaf surface, that kind of thing. So the uptake is better. In our situation, the idea is that we're trying to break soil surface tension. As soils dry, especially in marginally sandy soils like we have here, they tend to become a little bit hydrophobic and resist water movement through the soil profile. So the idea is that we apply these products and they break that surface tension, and water is able to infiltrate better into the root zone. It reduces runoff and increases plant availability and things like that. And yeah, when I say mode of action, I'm pretty much just talking about how the product works. Like, what is the specific mechanism that allows that product to do what it's intended to do?
Okay. But they're all generally are hoping to have that breaking of the water tension. That's kind of how all of them work?
Yes and no. So the Revive products, yes, that's generally the idea of all wetting agents. Now, with our polymer sands, they do have, some of them do have some kind of a wetting agent with them, but they get at the problem from kind of the other side. So as we're getting rainfall, the idea with these polymer sands is really, or polymer products, is really to increase water holding capacity. So as water moves down into the soil, which is why they do have wetting agents on them sometimes, the idea is that they will retain that water where it stays and not let it infiltrate down out of the root zone. So it's kind of maybe a simple comparison, but if you think about something that like what's in a diaper, sodium polyacrylate. Now, this is not the chemical that we use in a lot of these products, but it serves a similar purpose, so that like a diaper is intended to hold lots of water, right? Or liquid. And we're essentially trying to do the same thing in the soil. We're trying to use these polymers to turn that soil into a better sponge to hold on to water and keep it available for plant use longer.
Okay, that I am very glad that I asked for clarification on that. It makes a lot more sense. So there's kind of the one is to actually get the water into the soil, and the other is once it's there, how do we keep it in there?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great summary of my, long-winded answer to your question.
No, I definitely needed the long-winded version, so that's perfect.
And the reason, honestly, we picked two essentially modes of action that are so different from one another is because they're marketed in very much the same way. And so when a homeowner goes to a garden center or whatever to buy a product for their lawn, or even a landscaper, you may have two bags that sit right next to each other that both say save water in your landscape, make your turf better. But they have very different ways that they get around the issue. So we thought it would be interesting as we were building this study to kind of run the whole gambit of it and see, okay, they work differently, but they're marketed the same way. Which one, what are their actual effects?
All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question and then immediately put a pin on it because I want to ask about the survey.
Okay.
So a question for future, a little teaser for everybody. I would like to know if these products are used in combination and if that's like a frequent thing or was part of what you were trying to study. So let that percolate. But the survey.
Yes.
So how did you actually get people to take the survey? Was it just something that you like blind mailed to people and were like, please turn this in? Was it something that was facilitated by those municipalities? How did that work?
No, we bribed people. So we actually used an online service called Qualtrics, and their job or what they do is distribute surveys based on whatever protocol we set up. So essentially how it works is we set parameters on like the kind of respondents we're after. So, if our survey is for homeowners, we don't want them sent to necessarily people that live in apartments or that don't manage a water authority or manage their water. And so we essentially, how it kind of works is you pay per response. We got a grant from one of our local water districts or our local water district to do this. And we said, okay, we need about 300 responses to make this a powerful enough study. And then Qualtrics, it's kind of great. Qualtrics does the heavy lifting, right? We do our focus groups, we validate the instrument, we go through all of that, and then essentially send the survey to them with our parameters, and then they sample for us. It's really a good service.
That's amazing. Wow, I didn't even know that those kinds of things existed.
And there's a couple of them out there. There's another one I think called, probably trying not to endorse specific companies or whatever, but there's 2 or 3 of them out there that do specific things like this. We just happen to, have contracts through the university with Qualtrics and went about it that way.
Was that then how you also got what you needed for sending out your informational mailers, or was that a separate process?
So those mailers were actually included in this survey. So our respondents saw a digital version of it.
Okay.
And we kind of went back and forth on this idea, actually. So one of our original ideas was actually to work with our local municipality, the city of Lubbock, to include physical mailers in the water bills or whatever. But we kind of wanted to cover a larger geographic region than just our city. And so as we were looking at it, we were like, okay, if we develop a digital instrument that'll go out with the rest of these survey questions, it kind of contextualizes our responses. So the people that are talking about their current practices actually see these communications pieces. And so we can compare like apples to apples. So this person said they use this much water. They don't follow ordinances because X, Y, and Z. But if we communicate in this way, they may respond in this way. So we felt as we were developing this, and we worked with one of my committee members that's with Ag Economics to develop this, we thought it would be advantageous for us to compare everything across the board in the same instrument.
Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So kind of figuring out, does communicating in a more positive or negative way influence behavior, and using the survey as kind of a feedback loop for that? Yeah.
Essentially, that's it. And it's interesting because and I'm still analyzing data for this. It turns out like 300 respondents answering I don't know, we had like 176 questions total. Oh, there was a piece that another graduate student worked on that I haven't really messed with, but it's a lot of data. It was like 25,000 data points. And so I'm still analyzing that data a little bit. But we also ask questions not just on the communication pieces, but like if your municipality raised your water bill by X number of dollars per 1,000 gallons, if they put in an ordinance that you'd be fined X number of dollars if you break the ordinance, X, Y, and Z, what do you do in that case? So we wanted to compare as much as we could, or look at what do people do when they're communicated to? What do people do when they are essentially legislated, right? Like when there's an ordinance that, or regulated is a better word, when their use is actually regulated by a municipality. Because West Texas or Texas maybe in general, is an interesting place where people really don't like being told what to do, right? It's a lot of, it's my water, you can't tell me what to do with it. So what we wanted to see is, are people more responsive in some ways to positive or negative communication in one way or the other versus being billed or being fined? And so that was, we kind of, again, it seems like for all these projects, we're coming at it from multiple angles, but that's kind of the approach we took.
That's amazing. My brain is just spinning with like wanting to just dive into this deep psychological just wormhole of what motivates humans to do what they do.
Well, and these studies have been done in several places, and there's quite a bit in the literature about water use and water use ethos and all of that. But in our area, it's very novel research. Like what we did was exploratory in a lot of ways. So what we're hoping is that we work through a couple of the possible publications that come with this, or work through the data, and then maybe justify some more in-depth work in this, because I'm very interested in what makes people conserve resources, and whether that is a new product that we kind of looked at through our field study. That's people, everyone likes a gadget, right? Everyone wants a gizmo to do something with. And so is it technology and new tech that we could use to make people save water, or can we communicate and educate better? And that's where my brain goes when I think about maybe future research I want to dive into personally.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the show. Interested in learning more? Vikram's article, Evaluation of Water Retention Products to Conserve Urban Water Resources in Home Lawns, published in Crop, Forage, and Turfgrass Management, will be freely available for the next 2 weeks. You can find a link to it in our show notes. If you are a certified crop advisor or certified professional soil scientist, you can also take a quiz for continuing education units for this episode, which can be found in our show notes or on certifiedcropadvisor.org. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, totally. Reeling my excitement back on that just a little bit to kind of refocus. So back to the home lawn products that you were testing. So obviously you were trying to compare how well they worked. So can you tell us a little bit about your experimental design, how you tested that part of your experiment?
Sure. So we had a randomized complete block design. Essentially, we used established Bermuda grass, turfgrass, and set up plots and, applied products to these plots. And so half of the plots were aerified. We rented a, consumer grade over the counter kind of core aerifier, which essentially is something you would run on turf grass to pull soil plugs and improve infiltration, reduce compaction, etc. And so we tested these products on both control plots that were non-aerified or plots that were non-aerified, and then some that were aerified as well. We didn't really see a difference between the two, so we ended up pooling that data. So each plot was treated with one of our products, and we essentially watered the product in with a 1/4 inch of water, And then every time we reapplied based on the labeled instructions, we would put another 1/4 inch of water. But essentially, we ran it during the summer in Texas in like June and July, and it was 1,000,000 degrees. And it didn't rain like pretty much at all after initiation, which was great for our research. But that was the basics of it. We set it up in small plot design or in individual plots, and then we took NDVI, which is normalized difference vegetative index. Essentially, we're looking at how green is our plot, how much is covered by green material. We looked at volumetric water content at 1.5 and 3 inches. We took color measurements, and then we had some infrared temperature probes set up on each plot. So each plot had its own probe, and we measured canopy temperature of each plot and compared that just to ambient temperature to see if the leaf surface was warmer or cooler than the air. And so we took a lot of data. There was a lot of data collection.
Yeah, seems like. Quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think people, maybe the average non-turf scientist will say, when they hear canopy, they would think like, oh, in a forest, like the tops of the trees. What qualifies a canopy when you're talking about grass that is that short? What does that mean?
So it's pretty much the same thing if you were really tiny, right? So if you were tiny enough to hang out at the soil surface in your front lawn, you could look up and see like a cover of green leaves. The growing point on turf grass, and it's one of the reasons that turf grass behaves as it does, is actually at what we call the crown of the plant at the soil line. And all of your growth comes out of that growing point. So whereas if you were to go out and, to a forest and take a giant lawnmower and top all the trees in a forest, they may not be so happy, right? Because their growing points are up at the top of the tree and you've cut off that main growing point. With turf grass, though, you can go and repeatedly mow it or historically graze it with some kind of an animal, and it regrows because that growing point is at the soil line. So when we talk about turf canopy, we're literally talking about that green, leaf blade surface that you see. Turf grass is interesting because if you were to really like pull up a leaf blade, only about the top, say half of the leaf blade is green material, because the leaf blade that's below that never really intercepts any sunlight. So the plant moves all the chlorophyll into the top half or so of each leaf blade because that's where it's intercepting sunlight. So when we say turf canopy, we literally just mean the top of that turf grass surface where all the leaves are, all the photosynthetic material is.
That's amazing. I'm getting flashbacks to like pulling up grass as a kid, and I remember that. Like, that explains a lot about things I saw as a child pulling up grass.
Well, and even like, we recommend generally in the turf industry that you never, when you mow, this is maybe a little bit of a departure, but you never take off more than a third of the leaf surface or a third of the height. So say your grass is 1 inch tall, you never mow more than, a third of an inch off. Because if you cut more than that, you end up scalping and you take off all of that photosynthetic material, since it's only the top half of the leaf blade. So, make sure you maintain your mower height appropriately. That's, again, has nothing to do with this study, but it's important for people to know.
That is extremely important for people to know. Cool. So then kind of moving on, back to, I'm unpinning the question about using multiple modes of action at the same time. Was that something you looked at? Is that something people do? Thoughts on that?
So that's not something we did in this trial. We didn't treat each plot with multiple products. We only used one product per plot. Now, like Revive Granular, for example, has a wetting agent, and it also has some fertilizer in it because it is dehydrated poultry waste. So it's like an organic product, right? There's organic matter in it. So that sort of employs multiple modes of action of water conservation. But no, in this study specifically, we did not apply more than one product per plot. Now, that would be something interesting to try in the future, because I would say a lot of homeowners probably do that. I would say they're like, oh, here's two good products recommended for my lawn. I'll use some of both of them. And I think that would probably be pretty common in the industry and in the trade and in common management to stack a lot of these products. So that would be an interesting take for a future research study as well, is can we combine these in a way that makes them more effective?
Sure. 177 questions. We got it.
So many questions. Yeah.
Okay. So then once you completed all this research for both the products and the survey, what did you find? What were your results?
So still looking at the survey. That's the part of my dissertation I'm still finishing at this point. So still, jury's still out on some of that. It looks like there is some kind of a pricing effect that, people don't necessarily want to pay more money for their water, but in certain demographics, they will. It also looks like people respond fairly well to this kind of appeal to the common good that if we work together, my kids, my grandkids, my neighbors will still have water in the future. I can't say any of that definitively because, like I said, we're still analyzing some data. But for the field study, we actually saw some pretty good results. So as far as the polymer sands go with our AquaSmart Pro and our Max Sand, during both years of our trial, where, again, it was very dry, we saw on several dates that they were significantly better than our control plots, where in terms of visual turfgrass quality and percent green cover, which is, again, in a given area, how much of that is green, like living grass material. And our other metrics, we actually did see that they were significantly better. So we saw that with both of our polymer products, more so in 2015, the first year of our study, where we had a fair amount of rainfall before we initiated our trial. And then it was dry after, but that early season moisture seems to have helped. As far as our Revive products, Revive Liquid in general was not too different from control. We saw that they followed the same trends, but we didn't see a lot of statistical differences there. However, on a lot of dates, measurement dates in both 2015 and 16, we saw some really great improvements in turf quality compared to control with our Revive granular product. Some of that we can explain with the fact that there was a little bit of fertilizer in that product that helped with overall plant fitness. But also we think it just, improved overall water status, even though we didn't see with our monitoring equipment any differences in soil volumetric water content. So to summarize all that, I just said a whole lot of words at you, but to summarize all that, we did see benefits to applying some of these products, these water retention products. And those biggest benefits came in percent green cover, so how much of the turf surface is green, and also in visual turfgrass quality, which is one of the most common metrics we use in turfgrass science. It's interesting because probably compared to a lot of your other guests that you've had, our main deliverable, so to speak, our main yield is how good does your grass look? Is it playable on a golf course? Do your neighbors make fun of you because it's brown, So visual quality ratings are really meaningful in turfgrass science because that's what we're after. We're after a good-looking, healthy turfgrass.
Sure. And was there a difference between kind of those two groups, between the get the water into the ground versus keep the water once it's there?
So we didn't really compare them head to head because of how different those modes of action were. We were comparing everything back to control. I would say, though, just looking at the data, they're both effective. And so we maybe saw a little bit longer green cover in exceptional or very severe drought conditions with our Revive product, our Revive granular product, but we didn't really compare them head to head statistically just because that was maybe not a fair comparison because of how different they are. But we just wanted to see, based on a control, untreated plot, how do they do,
Sure. So What does this mean for the homeowner and also on a larger scale, maybe people who are trying to get people to conserve water? What are the implications of all this?
So there's a couple. I think what it means in a lot of ways is that there are ways let's talk on the product side first. And one thing I didn't mention was with our canopy temperature, and I'll kind of come back to this a little bit. When we measured canopy temperatures, we did see similar results to what we got with a lot of our other metrics. So with, our Revive granular product, we saw like a lower canopy temperature versus air temperature, which essentially means that plant is transpiring and cooling the leaf. And so that is desirable when we look at that. But as far as implications go, if you have a home lawn, I think people want it to look as good as it can. That's the point, right? Like we want it to be something that improves our property values, that overall is kind of a net benefit to our landscape and to our lives. Well, as in our part of the country, water ordinances are probably going to become more stringent in coming years as water resources diminish due to a whole lot of things, use, agriculture, everything else. Homeowners still want to be able to have a healthy green lawn and have it, improve their property value, or I say lawn, maybe landscape in general. So I think the implication is that there are ways we can reduce our water consumption. Like just because you can't apply the amount of water you did 10, 15, 20 years ago, that doesn't mean that you just have to let your lawn die. There are ways around the issue through better technology, through the use of some of these products, through just better management, where we can, still have the products we want without overusing or straining our water resources. And I would say on the survey side, it's kind of a similar answer that as we communicate these messages to homeowners, to water users, to end users, there are a whole bunch of different ways that we can manage that message, whether it's messaging through pricing and ordinance or direct messaging through, communication means. I think there are a lot of ways we can be effective at telling the story that you don't have to give up your landscape. You don't have to give up your lawn if you don't want to. We just need to manage things more effectively and be more conscious of our resources.
Totally. So this next question we've kind of touched on a few times throughout this interview already, but what are the next steps or future research for this area?
So a couple of things that I want to look at. Again, I would love to, your idea of maybe stacking some of these products or your thought about that is I think valuable to see if we use these in combination. What does that do? I think as far as some field work, I would like to see. So we tested this in we put the products down and turn the rain off. It was like very hot, dry, minimal water conditions, very severe drought. Which would be like if a municipality pretty much said, you cannot water. If you turn on the sprinklers, we're going to fine you or whatever. What I would like to see in the future is using some different irrigation levels and see if there's a break point. So can you use actually half of ET or half of the normal irrigation or the allowed irrigation and still maintain results? Could we drop that down to 25%? Do you need 75%? So I think looking at the same kind of study using variable irrigation would be pretty meaningful. I think on the survey side and the messaging side, just drilling down a little bit deeper into the psychology of some of these things. And as we start to get and validate some of our results, what are 2 or 3 areas we can pull out? So if it's messaging, let's develop actually work with a municipality to, instead of just saying, what would you do if you saw something like this, literally send some stuff out with water bills and all of that kind of stuff. Can we adjust sprinkler settings? I think what I really would like to drill down into based on our results when we kind of get them done is what are the most meaningful areas that we can improve our knowledge and our methodology as far as just communicating to water users about their landscapes and about their water use in and of itself.
Yeah, those are great areas to expand upon. I'm glad that I have an idea that is useful to
No, it really was.
Great. So anyway, final 3 questions for you.
Okay.
First one, if people want to learn more about this research, these issues, what is maybe like one key resource? And then we'll have boatloads of other resources also in the show notes. Check them out.
So we're trying to, as we do this, I think we're trying to figure out where to send some of this information. I think Extension is a great place to find more resources on a lot of these things. I know in a lot of regions, not just with the Texas AgriLife Extension Service, but with, extension services nationwide, worldwide even, water is a big deal, and it's something we talk about a lot. And so as a lot of this research gets published, it's up to our extension professionals to really get that information to the public where it needs to go. So I would say using your extension resources, whether it's through a local county office or just online through any of a number of them, that's probably a great place to start. I think working with local garden centers and landscapers and people working in the industry who are, committed to this style of water conservation and landscape is a big deal. I think a lot of them are very knowledgeable. And also, I think just working with water departments and talking to your municipal water authorities, whatever that looks like in your area, about their conservation practices and about the information they have in terms of different ways you can be more efficient. I know our local City of Lubbock Water Department does a lot of education in conservation and just easy tips and tricks and those kinds of things.
Excellent. We will include links to those in the show notes. Second question, if people want to actually then take that next step and get involved in these things, what are a few tips for that?
I would say just so if I had one tip for someone that wanted to be more conservative in their landscape, I would say it's learn where the off switch is on your sprinkler system. That sounds kind of like tongue in cheek maybe, but the fact is, like, you would be shocked. Well, maybe you wouldn't be shocked, but driving around in a rainstorm and seeing how many sprinkler systems are still running, or when it's 110 degrees and windy here in West Texas. So if you're managing your water in your own landscape, learn about how to use your controller and learn about how to use your irrigation system. Don't necessarily just count on someone else to manage all that for you. In terms of that, YouTube is your friend. If you've got a model of irrigation controller that you're scared to break by turning dials and pushing buttons, look up the model number on YouTube. I can pretty much guarantee there is some kind of tutorial about how to use it. So learn your system, find new products that are available, and turn off your sprinklers if it's raining or freezing or blowing 30 miles per hour.
That seems fair to me. Those are some great tips. Okay, final question here. What is one fun fact about you that listeners wouldn't know if all they had was your research?
What is one fun fact about me? I think I wrote this in our notes before and I forgot what I wrote down. I do a podcast that is super nerdy and plant related, and mostly just, I tell dad jokes. That's maybe a fun fact, that I told dad jokes about plants.
That's the best podcast pitch I've heard in quite some time. I love it. That was actually the fun fact that we had agreed to talk about.
Great. On point then.
So you nailed it. Good job. So your podcast is called the Planthropology Podcast, which is a very clever title. And you basically just are talking to plant people about their lives as plant lovers, the plants themselves, kind of anything plant related, right?
Yeah, that's essentially it. So, I've talked to people that are soil scientists and water people and plant nerd. Mostly, I think everyone I've talked to is a plant nerd in some way. But people that work in the green industry and environmental sciences, everything from water to climate to vegetables and it's what I was interested in when I was starting it is, yes, the subject matter, but more the stories of the people. And I think a message we don't necessarily tell our students or tell the public a lot, or maybe well enough, or at least in my opinion, is, okay, you have learned about soil science. You know everything there is to know about soil biochemistry and, microfauna, et cetera. In 10 years, how are you going to be using that? Right? In down the road in your career, are you going to still care about earthworms and sprinkler systems and photosynthesis? And so I'm trying to find people that are either currently in it or that are graduates and working and living in this field, and telling the story of why they're still passionate about what they do, about why they still love the environment, still love the soil, and everything in between. So it's pretty lighthearted and laid back. We have a lot of fun doing it. We tell lots of jokes, but I think we do get to drill down and really see what makes a lot of, ag science and natural science people tick, and why they care about it and why they still do it.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple episodes. It's great. I highly recommend our listeners check it out. I'm assuming there's a high level of overlap there. Where can people find your podcast to listen to it or contact you about it if they're interested?
Sure. So you can get it at planthropologypod.com, which is just anthropology with a PL on the front. We're on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any of the podcatchers. So any of the main podcast apps have it. You can contact me through the website, planthropologypod@gmail.com, or even through my Texas Tech email, which is just vikram.baliga@ttu.edu. I'm happy to talk to you about more about that, or more about the research I do, or, answer whatever questions you might have.
Excellent. We will have links to all of that in our show notes. If you are looking for direct links, we will be featuring you on our Twitter account, Field Lab Earth, all that kind of good stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was a great conversation. Lots of good nuggets of information in there. Thanks for being on.
No, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Field Lab Earth. You'll find a link to today's paper and other resources for this episode in our show notes or on our website. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for show topics, please contact us at podcast@sciencesocieties.org or on Twitter @FieldLabEarth. If you'd like to hear more content like this, please subscribe, and don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you find your podcast if you like our show. This podcast is a joint production of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, and Soil Science Society of America. Special thanks to Lobo Loco for the use of their song Spook Castle on the intro and outro of our show. Opinions and conclusions expressed by authors are their own and are not considered as those of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, Soil Science Society of America, its staff, its members, or its advertisers.